Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of IDEAChatCNY. My name is Tom Charles, and I'll be your host for the final episode of the season. For anybody who's never tuned in before, IDEAChatCNY is a bi-weekly web series hosted by the RVD IDEA program here at Syracuse University. We bring exciting entrepreneurs and innovators from across the world, this time from our hometown in Syracuse, to talk about what they've done and how they can tell their experiences and help you along your way with your own. For young professionals and students like yourself. In the past, we've talked about everything from design, media, startups, green tech, and today we're going to be talking about passion and building a company around your passion. I do want to send another thank you to Trace Cohen of Launch It from 2 weeks ago for taking time out of his vacation while in LA to talk with us. It was very, very nice of him, and we thank you, Trace. And we encourage anybody, before we get the show started, to follow the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag IDEAChatCNY, and you can tweet directly at us at the handle @IDEACUS. So as a little background on Kean, Kean's a really impressive fellow. He has two master's degrees under his belt already. One from the Maxwell School of Citizenship here at Syracuse University, and one from SUNY ESF in fishery sciences. He's also now pursuing his third master's degree, as an engagement fellow from the IDEA department directly. He's studying entrepreneurship here at Whitman. And he's also worked in professional contexts, both leading international research projects and working for federal agencies. But the cool thing is that what Kean has been able to do is on paper, you can very clearly see a linear story. He's studied policy, fishery sciences, business, and he's now combined that all in his company, which is Prey Tackle. It's a design company for fishing lures, and they use 3D printing technology to make those lures. So, Kean, that's a little overview of it, but since we have you here in person, I'd like you to tell the audience a little bit about what you guys do and how you got started.
Absolutely. Thanks for that nice introduction.
No problem.
So, I think I should start by saying what I had started out to do at Syracuse University, because that kind of leads into where I find myself today. So, the three masters that I'm working on right now, the first two were intentionally focused on fisheries resources. I was always interested in studying either fish as a commodity or as a scientific subject or as a policy. They're really neat subjects because as a wild commodity, there's this interface of both conservation and economic forces that create a lot of tension. So I started studying the MPA program, Public Administration and Fisheries Science, with that interest. However, I had some extra time on my hands, and I started tinkering with 3D printing. It was part of a class that I took at the iSchool at Dan Pacheco. And I had been making fishing lures for a very long time. Like, that's kind of how I got into that field, by just fishing and being in the outdoors. And so I started looking at these machines and thinking about what all these other people in the world were doing with them. They were making all kinds of cool tools and all kinds of new trinkets. And I thought to myself, well, it's such a difficulty making a fishing lure. Either, especially what they call hard baits, these solid plastic lures. You either have to carve plastic or wood, or you have to get kind of expensive equipment. These 3D printers seem like a good fit. So I just started teaching myself 3D modeling, and I started using the 3D printers on campus at the Makerspace in Kimmel Hall. And I started making cool fishing lures. I was really just replicating what already existed, things I was already familiar with.
And at the time, this was not, you didn't have any intention of making a business around this?
Not at all, no. I was part of a class that focused on creating a business plan. And so kind of by necessity of filling the criteria, the grading criteria of the class, I did make like a business plan. But I never really thought that I would have enough of an idea to be able to create a product that a lot of people would want to buy. In fact, the very first idea was about file sharing. I wanted to create a space online that emulated what like Thingiverse is doing, where you can download all kinds of shapes and toys for 3D printing. Yeah,
I didn't actually know that about your company.
Yeah, so it started off as a way to share files because I saw other anglers sharing 3D printed lure files online. I was like, hey, there should be a central place for this to happen. And in the course of making fishing lures and making files to print, I started creating cool things that I had always thought wouldn't it be cool if a lure could do that? And I would just try to make it and experiment, and then I came up with new kinds of designs, shared them with some of my friends who are also anglers, and it turns out I made some cool stuff that would sell. And that's what really began the business.
So without getting necessarily into the details, your main project, I believe, is called the Pacer.
Yep.
Your main lure. And that combines 3 different lures into one, correct? Or 3 different movements.
That's right. So the Pacer is really cool. There's 3 lures that pretty much every angler who fishes on a regular basis knows well. One of them's called a popper, one of them's called a walking bait, and one of them's called a floating jerk bait. Those are funny names, but they actually represent either how they work in the water or how they're fished. And all of them work in the top, either directly at the surface of the water or within the top 2 feet of the water. And all 3 of those lures are meant to replicate like a wounded prey fish struggling through the water. And I thought to myself, well, all these lures are capturing different behaviors that wounded fish exhibit, that predators look at. Wouldn't it be neat if you could combine all 3 into one lure, and if you could switch between them in mid-cast? And so you could kind of call my process of making a lure like an evolution, because I would go to my computer, make a bunch of different files that were slightly different from one another, and print them off all in one plate. And I would put hooks on all of them and take them fishing, and I would find the attributes that got me closer and closer to that desirable 3 patterns in one bait. And just by, like you could say, natural selection, I found the traits that were the best for creating that kind of a triple action, and eventually came to the product that I have been selling today.
Very cool. So one of the things, though, so clearly this is rooted in passion. But there's 2 kind of schools. There's the one school that says, don't do what you love professionally, you'll kill it for yourself and you won't love it anymore by the time you retire. And then on the other hand, there are those that say, follow your dreams, follow your heart, build a career around what you love and you'll find happiness. It seems very, very evident that you're going in the latter route, at least with this project. And I'm curious, how have you decided that this was actually something that you wanted to go into business around? Because as somebody as young as yourself, you don't have necessarily the network, maybe some of the skills that you need. You don't have a full team surrounding you with other people who are equally as passionate. So when did you decide, I'm going to actually take this serious, start investing in this time and money into this?
Well, yeah, you kind of got a couple of different questions in there. All of them really valid and interesting. Let's see. What I would first say is that if you can combine a successful business model with your passion, that's like the holy grail. Like, that's awesome. Because not everyone can do it, but you seem to find that people who can do work on something that they're really passionate about have very happy lives.
Right.
Now, some people would argue, well, you eventually get bored of it, but I don't think that's the case, because through any career, your responsibilities and what you do evolve. And as long as you're surrounded by the kind of people who share your interests, I think that's what adds a lot of meaning to life. Now, to bring it back to away from philosophy and more towards like pragmatic, like, is this a good choice? It ultimately always depends on the business model. If you don't have a way to generate revenue, and if you're not making profit, then no matter how passionate you are about it, it's not going to be sustainable. But that being said, if there is a glimmer of hope that it is a sustainable business, there's some other reasons to think that going after things you're passionate on are worthwhile. And here's what I would suggest. Being passionate about something is correlated with other attributes that lead to successful ventures. For example, I love fishing. I started making lures that people seem to want to buy. But I was able to talk to dozens and dozens of friends and families and a whole network of anglers with sharing my product. Like, if I had never fished before, or let's say if I was getting into a new type of microscope, just some random idea, right? I don't know anyone who makes microscopes. I don't know a whole lot about microscopes.
And you don't have language.
So I'm not much of an asset to my own cause, right? But because I'm passionate about that field, I can immediately be an asset for the business to grow. And that's essential. If you're in a bootstrapping mode, if you're trying to raise capital, you need to be educated about the space. And that's correlated with being passionate about something. So there's that going for it. The second thing is, I love making fishing lures. I love selling them. I love interacting with people, but it's hard. Like, it's really, really hard trying to start a company. And you need a really big carrot on the end of a stick to get you to wake up and get going after it.
I can imagine.
And so having something that you're passionate about kind of adds mass to that carrot, right? It gives you a greater incentive to want to work harder. And that incentive is really important. and you can't undervalue what that is. So I do understand some people are like, well, go after what you think is the greatest opportunity. But a lot of people think, when they think greatest opportunity, they only see a dollar sign. They see a margin. And really, when you're a startup, your greatest opportunity is the one that both has dollar potential, but also has the assets and resources to support it initially. And that's where the passion plays a really important role.
Very insightful. We do actually already have a question from the audience.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah, D. Cater asks,
hey,
you have 3 degrees. How have they helped you along the way in your startup?
God, why do I have 3 degrees? I ask myself that all the time. Having 3 degrees, I could talk to each one and how they've been an asset. I studied fishery science, so understanding the biology that gets fish to go after lures is really important. We might talk about marketing later, so I'll be brief, but you want products that work on the principles of biology. And if you don't know a lot about biology, then anglers can kind of tell you're inexperienced and that your products might not be valid. And you can think of anglers as amateur biologists. They're out there trying to figure out what's happening in this ecosystem and what lures can they pick to help catch them more fish. So by understanding that system really well, I could create new kinds of products that fit that mold. The MPA degree, I studied collaborative process and I studied a lot of economics at the Maxwell School. And collaborative process, pretty much there's been so many instances where I've needed to collaborate with other people, work in partnerships, even if temporarily. And knowing effective behaviors to take in those kind of situations can be the difference between getting exactly what you need and going in a very wrong direction. Also, I would say with the Maxwell, well, with the economic background, of course, it has allowed me to self-teach a lot of business concepts that I'm not getting directly by entrepreneurship. My entrepreneurial master's has been fantastic for understanding some marketing components, for understanding maybe accounting, and perhaps some ideation, the class that you and I are in together right now. But at the MPA school, I got a lot of statistics, I got a lot of economics, and those kind of number crunching abilities are really useful, trying to figure out if what you're forecasting makes sense.
Right, and trends, big trends, yeah.
And at the business school, studying entrepreneurship, it's pretty self-explanatory. That's what I'm doing. And being in this kind of immersive environment and going through these different classes that I can structure towards my business is so useful.
I've seen you in 3 different classes now. Do
3 separate
your ultimate
things. Right. With
term project is for prey.
Right. Yeah, I did a valuation for finance. I did a feasibility analysis for another class. Yeah, it's just being able to use class time to focus on the business allows me to tackle 2 projects at once. And
tackle 2 projects at once. No pun intended.
There you go. So yeah, so that's probably the best. Best reason to be here. So
you actually alluded to the fact that we were going to probably touch on marketing at some point. So I assume now is as good as ever. Being a one-man team primarily, being somebody who doesn't have formal marketing experience in the past, what kind of struggles have you encountered, both particularly with Prey and then also just on a grander scale, lessons you've taken away about the marketing process and how it may differ from what somebody else our age perceives it to be?
Okay, so start with specifically with Prey, then I'll do the big picture. The challenges specifically with Prey are, there's a saying in the fishing world that lures are designed to catch anglers, not fish. And what that basically means is that anglers are so used to being marketed towards with new lures. New lures come out every year, and a lot of them are marketed under false promises, or they use really catchy packaging to try to get anglers to try to catch anglers. Right? They're not trying to catch fish; they're trying to catch anglers. And so with new products, anglers can be really skeptical. Like especially if you say something like, "Look, I've seamlessly combined 3 lures you know well into one bait." Most of them will say like, well, how seamless is seamless?
Yeah.
And like, I don't even think this is possible. I'm pretty sure you just pull my leg.
And you've heard that.
I've gotten that many times. Like some of my best friends have said, Kean, you have not made this. Like it doesn't happen. Like it can't be possible.
Right.
So, trying to be authentic and patient and dealing with people who are very resistant towards a sales pitch
Mm-hmm.
is a challenge, specifically for prey, because of the community I deal with. I'll also say that it's a very saturated world. There's a lot of people out there who try to start lure companies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's for the same reason that I'm doing it, because they're passionate about angling. They see some kind of idea and they want to pursue it to enrich their life, but also to make an income. So it's a competitive space of both little people all trying to be loud in their small ways, but also of these giant companies that aren't so big that they don't see any of the landscape as a threat.
Mm-hmm.
So like you could say, if a little search engine came about, Google's not going to feel too threatened by it.
Right.
But Google's a multi-billion-dollar a year company. But some of these big lure companies are doing maybe a little more than 100 million. And if you start growing and you start doing $1 million in sales as a lure company, 1% of the market, or compared to another company, that's pretty sizable. So you can quickly become a threat to these big companies. And I know of friends and other anecdotes of people who start lure companies that they get past the first hurdle of all the other noise that the small guys are making, and then get to the big, and then reach the big competition, and things don't always work out. So with marketing is your best tool in that situation, but it's also it can be your best friend, your worst enemy.
By growing an audience, you almost bring too much attention to yourself and get snuffed out. It sounds
exactly. Right. So that's one of the things that I'm trying to play with right now. Like how, as an independent entrepreneur with a cool idea, but not a lot of financing, how do I bring this to market most effectively using existing resources, but also understanding the values of my customer? So that's very price specific. The other thing, though, that I tell myself all the time, because it was great advice shared to me, is that you should always be marketing. You should always be pitching. You should always be trying to meet new people. Because marketing in itself is an exercise in networking. The more people who know you, the more people who might say, that's a really good idea, I need to connect you with someone. Or the more people who say, I want to help you in some way. Or the more people who just want to say, I want to buy 100 of your products and put them in my little store, my little tackle store, because I believe in what you're doing. So in some sense, by just going out and trying to sell product, you're actually sometimes getting lucky, and isn't the pun for you catching a really big fish, right?
Yeah.
You're going after just to make a sale, and you end up meeting someone who could completely change the direction of your company.
Right.
And that is, so the challenge of marketing is that it's kind of scary to go out and talk to people in settings you're not used to talking to strangers in. But in the same regard, it could be one of the most useful things you could do. So
another thing in my time knowing you that I've seen come up again and again as an issue is the IP, and how do you go about protecting it? Do you protect it because it's an expensive process? If you don't, as you gain that audience, eventually somebody is going to find out you're out here. They're going to see what you're doing, and if it's not protected, arguably they can take it quite easily. But at the same time, if you do, now that technology is available, and I'll let you speak on what can happen to that, but there's danger in that as well. Not the technology, but the design behind it in the patent. So that's something that I was hoping you could talk about as well.
IP, intellectual property. Yeah, there's a lot I could say about that. So one thing about what I'm working on now is it's difficult to know what exactly I can protect. I don't have a patent at this point. I'm working on a provisional patent. And also because I've kind of announced my innovation and started selling it, it actually kind of makes the process a little more challenging. So I'm actually very quiet about other things that I've innovated.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because definitely you.
A few tricks up my sleeve. So with IP in the fishing world specifically, it can be very risky, because when you're dealing with mechanical patents for things that are basically like toys that aren't very complex examples of innovation, it's easy to work around them. And there's a lot of examples in literature and legal literature about patented fishing lures where that exactly happens, where someone comes up with a really unique innovation and these larger companies figure out ways to emulate it, but still go to market with a comparable product. Very comparable in time. So to give a small anecdote, there's a bait called the chatterbait that came about, I think it was like the early 2000s. And it came out by this one company called the Chatterbait Company. And it worked with this blade that would hinge in the water and make this really loud, obnoxious sound, and you would get aggressive strikes from fish. And so all these companies did was they used the exact same body of the lure, but just changed the shape of the blade, which really wasn't that important for how it worked.
Right.
But they took it to court and were able to get away with it. So they could sell basically a very similar product and eat into
Call it
that.
their own.
Right. The other issue too is that you got to be able to protect your patents. Right. So if you're a little company that's Chatterbait and you're just starting to, break $100,000 in sales, every penny you have is sacred.
Yeah.
And if something happens where, one of these behemoth companies are like, yeah, we think we want to do what you're doing, but we're not really powerful enough to buy you out. And we also see a much more economical way to get what we want, they'll take it. That's the competitive market. So, which is, patenting can be very risky in the fishing world. So one of the strategies I have right now that I've been toying with is, well, how fast can I move this product to market? Since I've already kind of announced it and started selling it, I might not qualify for intellectual property. How can I leverage this innovative lure to create a brand that can then help me grow other products that I can patent later on?
And use the brand itself as your barrier to entry for other.
I can't emphasize how important brand is in this industry. There are 151 companies that make the same exact product in the United States, like a floating jerkbait. They all make it, and the reason
it's essentially a commodity. It's the same thing from one to the next.
Almost. I mean, okay, I shouldn't say that. Anglers would persecute me for saying that.
Okay.
But because of branding, and to some extent, because Rebel lures have a certain type of shimmer and size and length and shimmy in the water that's just right for this one body of water in Wisconsin. Like it's very it's that specific. It's that specific, and so people believe in that product. Sometimes it's based on experience and it's really true, and sometimes it's just based on effective branding. 5 of your friends say this is the lure you use that lure. Right. And who told those 5 people? Well, it might have been Rebel.
5 other people.
It might have been Rebel. So it's branding is what allows you to maintain market presence and to continue to sell lures. And as a small lure company, like when Chatterbait first entered the market, they didn't really have much branding. But what helped them was that the innovation they came up with was named after their company. So all these other lure companies had to start calling this bait like a Chatterbait, or it became known as a Chatterbait. And this company, which was Chatterbait Incorporated, began developing a brand because everyone knew this lure. And from there, they're able to start selling other things. So now they sell their competitors' products that are patent expired, the products that everyone sells. And they do it under the label that, well, we were the originator of Chatterbait. And that's something I'm kind of toying with the Pacer, especially because
changing the name of the company to Pacer Bait or something?
Something like that, or maybe changing the name of the price. I don't know what I would do with it, but just somehow link that directly to my company with really good marketing. And that way, when other companies start creating lures that do these 3 actions, because they realize you can do it, I hopefully will be known as the person who came up with the innovation.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Right, and maybe I should change the name of at least the product to maybe like the Prey lure or something like that, because then it would help me like it helped Chatterbait. Right.
So now that we've reached about the halfway point, I want to encourage anybody watching at home to follow along and ask questions using the hashtag IDEAChatCNY. And I am going to use that this as an opportunity to ask another question from the audience. You've been talking a lot about pursuing passion, but how do you suggest turning an initial passion into a tangible skill? So almost working in reverse, whereas it sounds like as opposed to going from skill and recognizing what you're good at and leveraging that, it's almost realizing what you want to do and then building skill around that, if my interpretation of the question is correct.
Okay, so building skill, you mean like creating a lifestyle business in some
sense? I believe so.
Being like, I love scuba diving and now I want to do something in that.
All about scuba equipment.
And so it's because I want to start a business for the purpose of starting a sustainable business. That's a good question. So are you talking about learning the skills of the hobby or learning the skills of turning your hobby into a business?
Well, it's an audience question, but it says turning an initial passion into a tangible skill. So perhaps it's actually learning about the business now. You know, you're very passionate about scuba, but now you need to know how to actually build a brand around that and build the company.
So you have the vision, right?
Right.
But then how do you take that vision with your passion and then become a business leader, become a leader in your own world, and create something sustainable? It's a great question. I would say I've been very fortunate with education. very fortunate. I have to thank IDEA for my engagement scholarship, because it has been an incredibly invaluable resource being at a business school and not a university. They say a university is the best incubator to possibly be in, and there's a lot of reasons to think that. But I would also say, if you're motivated enough, there is information everywhere online and in people that you can meet. And someone once told me it's about showing up and about just doing things and just keeping at it in a way that is in alignment with what you need. So for an example, if you are interested in trying to determine what the value of your company is, right? So you would first need to figure out, well, what are the different pieces of evaluation process? And once you can identify those pieces, then you can take each one of them and just start finding pathways to finding answers to them. So I would say self-education is a task, and being good at managing what questions you have and pursuing them. So it's about being really curious, but also being diligent and finding effective ways to answer those questions.
And also, I would imagine prioritizing. You got 15 things you have to do, but you can only learn one at a time.
Right, that's a really good point, Tom. Yeah, basically figuring out like what's the most important thing. So for example, that's a great point. For an example, I started teaching myself 3D modeling. And what I found out is that to be a good 3D modeler, you need about 1,500 hours to get really good at it. 15 hours, 100 hours is not something everyone has. So I taught myself the basics so that I can make some generic shapes and tweak designs. But once I had a lure shape that was good enough to fish, I then found someone else to say, okay, I need to outsource this skill. I can't learn this myself. And I found someone else to put some of the more subtle details that really make it a really beautiful product. So that's a great point. You got to figure out what things can I get help on, what things can I outsource, but what things do I need to know? And creating those two different categories is essential. So for example, things that I absolutely need to know is I need to know how to sell products. I need to know how to pitch.
You're the face of the company.
Right. I need to know how to act in public when I'm talking about my company. And that's, I can't outsource that. And so that is essential. That's an essential skill that I'm always working on. And as you can see from classes, I try to always take an active role in presenting and just taking every opportunity I can to work on my presence on stage. So.
Great. Actually, something that I was planning on bringing up later, but as we are kind of on this topic of prioritization and time management, it's no easy task, I imagine, to go to a master's school at such a competitive university such as this one while running a company. And thankfully, you are fortunate in that you get to work on the company for school projects in a lot of contexts, but there's still a lot that you have to do. And then still have a personal life. I know you have a lot of friends, you have a girlfriend, you have family. So how do you balance your time between all of that? Or do you?
Do I? Is a great question. Do I balance my time? I think so. Some days feel better than others. I would say that right now it's been rough because finals week on top of I got like all these winter orders to fill, which is great.
Holidays are coming.
So I had about 30% of or 25% of loads that I've sold. People have come back to reorder for the holidays, which is great. And then plus a few other people too. So managing when things get busy like that can be tough. How do I do it? One of them is by overlapping, right? So I have a final assignment, but I also need to take some time to learn how to do a feasibility analysis on my business. So bam, those two things fall perfectly in place. And being scheduled. I think one of the most important things to do just in life in general is to stick to a schedule. And specifically like when you wake up and how you wake up will determine the rest of your day. And so if I need to get a lot of things done on a regular basis, even if I don't have anything to do immediately in the morning, wake up at no later than 7 o'clock, go exercise, get the day off on the right foot, and so you can get so many other things done. Then if you're saying, I don't really have to get out of bed till 9 o'clock and I can just take my time, it sets a precedent for the rest of the day. So I guess that just falls into the category of being diligent.
Great. And then one of the last topics I wanted to talk about was the idea of scaling your manufacturing. We talked about this a little bit before we came on the air, but I know it seems like 3D printing your lure is maybe hard to sustain as you get bigger, as you have more orders to place. When would you decide it's the time to switch to maybe a different manufacturing process or to invest in a 3D printer of your own? How have you been thinking about that? What's your thought process been like?
So like scaling my manufacturing. So I was chuckling while you were asking that question, only because I realized, answering your last question, I didn't even talk once about my social life. And it's because I think it's kind of, it's shrunk. That's where things tend to shrink when you're trying to manage time. But to answer your new question about scaled manufacturing, why have I chosen 3D printing and how do I want to scale? I've chosen 3D printing because it has allowed me to innovate and create and make product, like workable product, without having to invest heavily in resources. One 3D printer can allow me, that costs only a few $1,000s, can allow me to do all of that. Whereas if I wanted to do like injection molding, which would be a lot larger scale, I'd only be able to make one design, one shape, and it would also be a lot more expensive. So the 3D printer works right now with the business model because I'm small. Now, going forward, would I continue to 3D print? It depends. It depends on what happens in the market. Right now, we are just beginning to see the ability to outsource 3D printing at affordable rates. And
I'm sure you have a close eye on that.
Yeah, I have a very close eye on that. It's come down quite a bit. It's gone up and down with different things happening in the market, like with Amazon getting involved, and Google did some stuff over the summer with 3D printing. But like, it's almost at the point where I can outsource the production of my lure and still make a profit selling at my current price, and keeping with 3D printing. And so that's great. I don't have to change anything. And I find that anglers love when I tell them that my lures are 3D printed, because it's still kind of this like really cool concept. And it sounds high tech, and so it kind of feeds into that gimmicky model of selling lures. But it's also something really cool that anglers are like, wow, I own something that's 3D printed, and it's a fishing lure, which is something I love. So that is, if I tell someone, oh, my lure moves in 3 different ways, they don't believe me. But if I tell them, oh, it's 3D printed, like I just want it because it's 3D printed. I've never heard of that before, so it makes my sales easy. Now, the other really cool thing about 3D printing is that you can change the shape and size and soon to be the color of any object you make quite easily.
Really?
And customization in the lure world is so important. Remember I was saying like, oh, this lure only works in Wisconsin?
Yes.
Well, it's because of the prey, the food in that lake for bigger fish are uniquely shaped, and you look unique and the fish identify with that. So anglers need to have a great variety of lures. Now, if they had the ability to go online into an interface and to customize a lure to exactly their needs or what they believe their needs were, you could offer them custom products that fit exactly what they want. Right now, they go into the store and there's a giant wall of lures. If you go to like Bass Pro Shop, thousands of these things in all different shapes, sizes, and colors, because they're trying to offer this artificial customization, this sensation that you can find something close enough to fit your needs. Kind of like getting a shoe at a size 12. It's good enough, like it'll get the job done. But if you're really serious about running, you want a shoe that is designed to fit your foot perfectly. And that's what 3D printing can do for anglers. You can go online and get the lure that fits your needs absolutely precisely without having to change price dramatically. And that's the key, is that 3D printing allows for small custom orders of plastic components. That anglers value that.
One thing I thought about while you were answering that question was, so you mentioned how oftentimes you'll say it's 3D printed and customers immediately get excited about the product. Have you ever seen the reverse, where 3D printing is still relatively new technology, about half a decade now? Have you ever seen somebody be hesitant, thinking that 3D print, it might fall apart, it might crumble, they don't know enough about the quality of printing?
Most people that, so sometimes I meet fishers who are also anglers who are also engineers, and sometimes they don't, like, there's different kinds of 3D printing, and some of the types of 3D printing are, one, very, very expensive, and two, not compatible with water, I would say. And so if they have experienced one type of 3D printing and I tell them my lure is 3D printed, they might say like, well, that doesn't work well with the lure. So yeah, there's like the generalization of 3D printing can sometimes allow for miscommunication about my product. But ultimately, for the vast majority, I think that's happened, like, I can think of one example. But otherwise, besides that one example, people seem to be very excited about 3D printing.
It's great.
Yeah, and although it does reflect the the craze that was created around that market. And so I can't just market Allure on that value proposition, because either 3D printing is going to become a norm in the next couple of years and no one's going to care anymore, or 3D printing is going to go out of style and no one's going to care anymore. So it works well right now for starting conversations and for moving products, but again, I need to effectively market on good value propositions that really do aid anglers, not just that this is made in a new way.
Not a fad.
That's a fad, right? So yeah, it's a catch-22.
Great. Well, that wraps everything up for us. I do want to open the floor, leave you with any last thoughts you may have for young students, professionals that may be watching, interested in starting a career of their own.
It's a lot of responsibility, but what do I say to the world? I would say, since this is on the topic of passion, I would say that a lot of people out there might say that you will learn to hate your job no matter what you do. Someone has told me that. So don't go after something you love, because then you'll learn to hate what you love. And I think that's completely false. I think that if you're really good at what you do, you'll always be evolving as a person.
Very true.
And to get good at to become really good at what you do, you have to be passionate about it. So if you do pursue something that you're passionate about, use that passion to work really hard, and you'll never get bored of it, because you'll always find something new and charming about it. So.
Well, Kean, those are poetic and great words to wrap up the last episode of IDEAChatCNY for the whole season. Be sure to join us next semester. We'll be having another great series with great innovators from around the world. Anybody who wants to get in touch with Kean, you can tweet him at Clifford Kean, or for a more immediate response, he has offered you to email him directly at praytackle@gmail.com. And just because we are wrapping up doesn't mean the conversation has to, so we encourage you to continue using the hashtag IDEACNY over the winter break, and to follow us at IDEACUS. With that, good luck on your finals, everybody, and enjoy your December holidays.
Thanks.
So long.